picture of the White House at 9:48. Former President Jimmy Carter turns 100 years old today, making the first former president ever to live a full century. Happy birthday, Mr. President. The White House honoring the 39th president's milestone birthday today with this display on the North Lawn. A star-studded benefit concert was held in Atlanta a couple weeks ago, raising more than $1 million for the Carter Center's international programs. And this week, thousands of Habitat for Humanity volunteers are in St. Paul, Minnesota, to build 30 homes. Among them, country music legends Garth Brooks and Trisha Yearwood. It's all in honor of the former president, whose work with the organization spans more than 40 years. In a moment, we will speak with Garth and Trisha. But first, let's bring in Rogers Chair at the American Presidency at Vanderbilt University, historian and our good friend John Meacham. John, great to see you. Jimmy Carter turns 100 years old today. I think the way people look at Jimmy Carter, his presidency, and certainly his legacy have changed so much in the 40-some years since he left office. How are you thinking about him today?
Yeah, there's a difference between headlines and history, and President Carter is the embodiment of someone who, in the short term, had a lot of political difficulties, which is kind of redundant. Politics is full of difficulties. But he was someone who saw far into the future, warned us about a lot of the issues about climate, was really an interesting bridge figure, if you think about it, for the Democratic Party. First Democrat in 8 years. President Johnson had won in 12 years, in 1964. Then the party had lost in 68, lost in 72. And it was President Carter who came out of the South, was the first self-described evangelical, born-again Christian, started on the Democratic side, and really embodied a kind of thoughtfulness as president that, again, the country decided to move in a different direction 4 years later. But that's what the country does. And I think his life since has been a Renaissance one, and there's a lot for us to learn from how he has conducted himself, both in office and afterward.
And John, certainly that had always been the line about Carter, right? That he was perhaps the most successful post-presidency. And that sort of rankled him because he was pretty proud of the job he did in office, too. Tell us a little bit about that. Is his 4 years in office, has history underrated them?
Yeah, exactly right. Whenever someone said that, you could see a sort of 1,000-yard stare in those eyes. It's like, I was just fine as president, whoever was saying that to him. Jonathan Alger has written a really excellent book about President Carter. A lot of times our view of a president changes over time. President Grant has been reevaluated. President Truman has been reevaluated. George Herbert Walker Bush has been reevaluated. You have this unfolding conversation, if you will, about what presidents mean and what they've accomplished. And one of the things I would recommend to folks, if they have some spare time today, as they're getting their popcorn ready for the VP debate, is take a look at that speech in 1979, popularly known as the Malay speech. He never uses the word. It's actually a really interesting speech. It's about the crisis of confidence in American life. And you can argue whether a president should talk about that sort of thing, but President Carter made the decision that he wanted to talk about what he felt was amiss in the country. And just Google it up, as George W. Bush would say, and take a look. It's a thoughtful exposition of the complexities of a democracy in a time of stress. That might actually shed some light. Well, might it not?
It might. Let's bring into the conversation Garth Brooks and Trisha Yearwood live from St. Paul, Minnesota. Their work with Habitat for Humanity goes back to 2007 when they helped to build homes on the Gulf Coast in the years after Hurricane Katrina. Also with us, CEO of Habitat for Humanity International, Jonathan Reckford. We're so happy to have you all with us this morning. Thanks for joining us. Garth and Trisha, I would just ask you, looking back on these last 17 years or so that you've been involved with Habitat, what it has meant to you, and what these communities get from the service of Habitat?
I mean, we talk a lot about how we feel like we probably get more out of it than everybody else does. It's such an honor to volunteer, and from the very first build in New Orleans, we were hooked, and it was just our honor.
Yeah, just to get to be a part of it. I know that we're hosting, but the truth is the greatest honor you can be is side by side. And then what I love is you're working side by side with the volunteers, but the true heroes are the homeowners, and they're right there busting their butts every day here, every morning, first thing, and just really proud to get to be a part of it.
Jonathan, you all have such a long legacy. People have become familiar. People have worked with you and participated in this great effort behind Habitat for Humanity. But for those who have not, how do you describe it to people, and how can they get involved?
Well, Habitat for Humanity is an affordable housing mission. We work in 70 countries and over 1,000 communities across the United States. It is, and we encourage you to go to habitat.org and learn how you can come out and see it, because we need people's muscles. We also need their voices. We've got a huge affordable housing crisis in this country and around the world. And I think today is a really special one because it is President Carter's 100th birthday. And it also marks 40 years since the Carters first got involved with Habitat, which is how the world found out about Habitat. We're 48 years old, but when President and Mrs. Carter got on a bus and went up from Plains, Georgia to New York City, slept in a church basement, and rehabbed a tenement building on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, that's when the world found out about Habitat. And because of their inspiration and so many others, we've helped 59 million people have new or improved housing around the world.
So Garth and Tricia, let me ask you, and certainly Habitat for Humanity, for so many people, is so closely associated with former President Carter. My wife and I have done a project together. Just tell us about what you're doing there. Why St. Paul, Minnesota? What help are you trying to provide?
Yeah, I think love is everywhere, right? That's all that matters. And that's what this place does. I mean, President Carter said it best. There's a light in all of us, and it'll shine its brightest when you're doing something for somebody else. So if there's something missing in your life, I'm just going to look right at you right now and say, Habitat's going to be the answer. Jump in here. You'll find that feeling. You said you did it with you and your wife. Same way I have to ask you back. Did you not feel like you were getting more out of it than you were putting in?
There's no question there that it benefited us far more than the people we tried to help, really.
Yeah, I mean, Tricia, you think I'm just looking at you two thinking, I'm sure you're tugged in a million directions. Everybody wants you on board with their project. What was it about this, of all the projects, that drew you in?
I think that, in our careers, we've done a lot of things to help other organizations, but when we first built in after Katrina and we swung a hammer that day, we're like, this is a way to really physically get in and do something that makes us feel just as good as everybody else. And also, it's a team building thing. You hear these hammers behind us. It's like, Garth says, that's the sound of love. It's really an amazing experience, the people that you meet and the people that you get a chance to interact with. We actually, after the week, we leave really inspired. So it's selfish for us. We enjoy it so much.
Yeah, it's a beautiful program. I want to ask you, Jonathan, I know you're a native of North Carolina. The pictures we've been reporting on today and in the last few days coming out of Western North Carolina and really across the Southeast, the Carolinas and Georgia and Tennessee, down into Florida as well. What are you hearing from your home state, and what role can Habitat play maybe down the road in bringing people back?
Yes. Thank you for raising that. One of the saddest parts of our work is helping communities rebuild after disaster. We need more housing, and we've already heard in our initial assessments, we have over 100 communities where Habitat works that were devastated by Helene. And so from Florida to North Carolina, Georgia, South Carolina, and Tennessee. And so if people want to go to habitat.org, you can learn about the response, learn how you can help, because sadly, the relief effort is where most of the resources go, but then there are years of rebuilding. And we have too much experience, unfortunately, rebuilding after these big disasters.
It is an extraordinary organization, Habitat for Humanity. Not familiar with it yet, have never participated. It really is everything Garth, Tricia, and Jonathan are saying. Habitat Humanitarians, Garth Brooks, Tricia Yearwood, and Habitat for Humanity International CEO, Jonathan Reckford. Thanks for being here, and thanks for all the good work you do.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right, we'll see you guys. John Meacham, before we wrap up this hour, there is a vice presidential debate tonight. We can debate ourselves about how much a vice presidential debate matters, but what will you be looking for tonight?
Well, we're going to have to see on the screen again a very stark choice. About, is the United States of America going to decide that an era of constitutional consensus embodied by Jimmy Carter is an era? Are we committed to peaceful transfers of power? You know, Jimmy Carter lost a big race to Ronald Reagan, was not happy about it, but he, with great grace, the American democracy unfolded. And it's a very clear choice. And it's beyond, I believe, personally, it's beyond policy. It's about the essential ethical view of a candidate, of a ticket, about the viability and importance of American democracy as opposed to a will to power at any cost. And that's what you're going to see.
All right, presidential historian John Meacham and the professor at Vanderbilt's most popular lecture, John Meacham. You're the greatest, John. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon. That does it for us this morning. Ana Cabrera picks up the coverage right now.
We have breaking news as we get underway this